Hi guys, Suzanne with Steadfast Homestead here, and I'm out in the raised bed area, and I'm going to talk to you about 3 things that I think are important that you need to be doing every day with your garden, whether it's vegetable garden, flower garden, vegetable flowers combined, whatever it may be. But 3 things that I think you need to be doing every day that will really put you on the path towards success in having a really good harvest of vegetables and flowers, whatever it is that you have in your garden. So let's get started when talking about the first thing, which I believe is probably the most important, and that is pulling weeds. You need to be out in your garden pulling weeds every day, or have some type of weed control in place that allows you to not pull weeds, which would be like landscape fabric laying down or weed barrier fabric. But if you don't have your whole garden covered in weed barrier fabric, which most people do not, then you need to have a plan in place to be weeding your garden or your raised beds on a daily basis. So that could look different depending on the stage of life that you're in. And I'm really big on talking about stages of life and what you're able to accomplish. So let's talk about that for a second, and I'm going to show you a little bit of my raised beds here and where my weeds are. Alright, so this is one of my cabbage beds, and you can see that it's not perfect. We've got some grass growing up there, quite a bit more here, and just you can see that there are weeds in there. So you can see that I do have weeds in here. It's not perfect, and I am never afraid to admit that. So going back to talking about stage of life, I am a busy mom. I still have young children. So even though they can come outside with me while I'm gardening, I still have to monitor them and also keep them from pulling out all the plants and destroying everything that we have planted. So it doesn't make sense for me. Honestly, it's impossible to come out here every day for a solid 30 to 40 minutes, an hour at a time, to do weeding. If I could do that, I would probably only weed once a week. But that is not my situation. So I have found it much more easier and successful to come out here at different times a day while the kids are running around playing and pull weeds for 5 minutes at a time or 10 minutes at a time. A lot of times when you walk around my raised beds, you will see that one side of all of the raised beds are weeded, but not the other, because that's where I was parked at and working on in that 5-minute or 10-minute interval. So I say just take 5 or 10 minutes of your day when you're out in the garden area, grab some weeds, get them out. I always kind of focus on some of the bigger ones. I don't know what this is called, but we have a lot of this in here because we brought the compost over, I think last year, from the cattle lot, and although it's really good for the plants, it does come over with a lot of weed seeds in it. So I just come here and for 5 or 10 minutes just pull out some weeds and make a pile on the ground. So that's the first thing that you need to be doing. Weed 5 or 10 minutes a day, and if you're doing that every day, and a lot of times 2 to 3 times a day, maybe 4, you would be surprised at really how much you can get done and how ahead and in control of the weeds that you really can be. Because we all know that once our gardens get too weedy and you feel like you're kind of at the point of no return, that's where a lot of discouragement happens and a lot of people just give up. So first thing that you need to do is weed every day. The second thing that I think you need to do every day is just a general walkthrough of everything that you have planted. You need to check on everything every day. And there's a couple reasons why I say that. The biggest reason is it is going to allow you to find any immediate problems that you have that need to be addressed. Such as you may find that a couple of years ago we had this issue with some chemical residual in the compost that we got from the cattle lot. So as I was checking every day I could tell when I would walk through my green beans and my tomatoes that it seemed like every day the leaves were curling just a little bit more and just a little bit tighter. And I had, the way that they were curled, just the shapes and everything, I had never seen that before. And then to see the progression of me checking it every day, then I was allowed to do a little bit of internet searching and realizing that yes, it was indeed from chemical residual that was still in the soil, some herbicide. But had I not been checking every day, I wouldn't really have noticed when that was happening, and I probably wouldn't have seen the gradual progression of it as well. So you'll be able to spot diseases a lot earlier, and I kind of take a different view from a lot of people on diseases, that I think just try to keep your plants as healthy as you can and see if they can overcome those diseases and still produce for you. I think we live in a world where there's so many viruses and bacterial issues in the soil, and insects spread a lot of the plant viruses that we have, that, you know, just because you find a disease, I'm not saying rip that plant out and dispose of it. But if you're checking every day, you will start to learn, you know, there might be an area that's a little bit wetter in your garden, it's a little bit lower, and things aren't growing as well as they are there. I can go through my ground garden and see, I can have a row of sunflowers from one end to the other, and right in the middle they're growing really well, but on the two ends they're not. And so that's allowing me, because I'm checking every day and seeing that the ones on the end aren't growing very well, it's allowing me to realize, okay, the ends of my gardens, they're probably a little bit lower, they're a little bit wetter, and a lot of the seeds are probably, the plants just, they're waterlogged, they're root rotting and things like that. So you definitely need to be walking through your garden and check what you have growing every day, and just see if you can see any differences. Pest control, that's another good one. Again, going back to the viruses, plant diseases, things like that, sometimes I feel like there's not a lot you can do about that. But pest control, I feel like you have a lot of options in your bag there of things that you can do with pest control if you catch it on time. We try our hardest not to spray. We actually haven't sprayed any chemicals on our garden for food in a long time. And because we walk through every day, especially with the zucchini, I can pull off those squash bugs, I can get those eggs out. But if I didn't do that every day, then it would get ahead of me and my plants would die. And they do, the zucchinis do eventually die from the squash bugs. But because I stay active throughout the summer, I'm able to get a decent enough harvest from them. So walk through your vegetable garden or your flower garden or whatever it is every day. The third thing that I think you need to do every day, as we look at my beautiful bed of cabbage that is doing really, really well, and a pretty good bed of broccoli, a really nice bed of red onions, but then look at this. And this is what I want to talk about here. This is a bed that got away from me. So half of it's okay, and the other half is not. So let's talk about the third thing here. All right, so the third thing is really important, and that is every day you need to remind yourself that this is your garden and this is your journey. You are a unique individual, and you have circumstances in your life that other people may not have right now. So what I'm getting at is, don't fall into the comparison trap. You're probably going to have something at some point that ends up like this, where it gets away from you. This is carrots. These are supposed to be carrots. And you can see that there are some in here and they are going well. But the problem with this bed is this is the fresh compost that we brought over last year, and it still has a lot of weed and grass seeds in it. And they grew much faster than when my little carrots were coming up, and I just couldn't get the weeds out fast enough because it was too hard to try to pick out the teeny tiny weeds next to the teeny tiny carrots that were emerging without hurting the carrots or ripping them out. And then next thing you know, the weeds and grass just kind of overtook it all. I will get some carrots out of here, but they're not going to be very big. So as of right now, I am just letting it go, and once we pull carrots, we'll pull out the weeds and do something else with it this late summer. But it's okay. Don't fall into the comparison trap. Don't get discouraged when you have a part of your garden that does get out of control or everything dies or whatever. Don't give up. That's the number one thing I want to tell people. I get discouraged very easily. It's taken me a long time to realize that in life. And because I get discouraged easily, I really have to be careful about the comparison game. So try not to get into the comparison game. You're going to have parts of your garden that fail. They may fail because of the weather. They may fail because of diseases. They may fail because you neglected them. I've been there. It happens. But it's okay. Just tell yourself what you can do better next time and try not to get discouraged. You are going to find some absolutely beautiful, immaculate gardens on the internet, especially social media. But it's okay if yours doesn't look like that. But just keep telling yourself that. So you can see here that I mean, I wouldn't call this a complete fail, but it's pretty close to a fail. So let's recap. 3 things that I think you need to do every day in your garden to help you be successful. 3 small things. 1 is weed every day. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, a couple times a day. Or invest in a bunch of weed barrier fabric. That's up to you. Second thing I think you need to be doing is walking through your garden every day. Looking at all the vegetables and flowers, everything that you have planted. Third thing that I think you need to be doing every day is not comparing yourself to everyone else and accepting that your garden journey is your garden journey, nobody else's. And don't give up, keep trying.